On the iPad, it's different. Good morning. It is still morning, and it's March 2nd. And living in Las Vegas, coming to you from Las Vegas. I'm trying to get a good position. I don't think I can on this side, actually. We have to do understanding just who we are as Americans and where do we fit in as Americans. I think I will switch sides though and get this other thing behind me, because then the sun won't be glaring in my face. And that's real. Uh-oh, got a phone call. Hey, Sherry, hold, what's going on? Huh? Okay, great. I'm getting ready to get online. Actually, I am live streaming now. Yeah, I am. Hold on, let me see if I can put you speaker. Can you hear?
To Vegas, so what I'm gonna do is be looking for houses out there online.
I'll give you a name of a realtor.
What?
I'll give you a name of a realtor.
Okay, good.
I'll text it. It's Angela Moore. She lives here in Las Vegas, and she's from Chicago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I will make sure that you have her information, and she can contact you, Sherry. And wonderful.
And wonderful, yes.
You can bring Mr. Sharif. You can bring Mr. Sharif if you're going to keep him.
Yeah, I am, and I'm bringing another one with me too. P92.
Well, you better find housing before you get here.
That's what I'm saying, honey.
All right, then I'll make sure you have it. I'll text you after we get off the phone. I'll send you her information.
Okay, and I'm doing my the thing that you
The educational services are not what they should be here. I can tell you that.
They're what?
They're not what they should be. So before you get here, you need to enroll in an online school that's nationwide.
For Caleb.
For Caleb, yeah.
Yeah. I think what I'm going to do with Caleb is put him into Connections Academy.
Yeah, I believe that's it. That's the one, Connections Academy.
Yeah, I'm gonna enroll him. Actually, I'm getting him out of the school district up here. I'm gonna enroll him in Connections Academy before we move out to Vegas.
Right, and then he'll remain enrolled.
Yes.
Because it's a national program.
Yeah. And so I don't want to deal with these schools because they're terrible, and I just don't feel like they're accommodating him as well, because if they would seen how Sacramento did him, and he started late, he got kicked out for 9th grade because he had to go, not kicked out, but he had to do the home care, and
he had to do home health because he got bit by the dog. I remember.
Well, he got bit by the dog, and not only that, then they got into that fight October 2nd where the whole school jumped off the 4 boys.
Okay, I remember that. But then Caleb wasn't implicated in any of that.
No, they didn't do anything about that.
But they put him on home health for public safety. But he still was entitled to those credits, and I'm telling you, you have to request the nurses, do the referral for the academic support that was provided.
Right.
Because there was a home health teacher. There was a teacher, and that means somebody got paid, and when somebody got paid, that means you get credits.
Yeah, I took him, remember, I had to take him to Kennedy to meet with a teacher.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and I don't know if he got credits for that or what, but I know he didn't get his full 9th grade credits, and now he's in 10th grade.
I think you need to call the district and then challenge that, because he was continuously enrolled. They can't take his credits; they have to give them to him.
Right, but if they say he didn't do it or whatever.
What do you mean? I don't understand. He didn't mean it. I'm trying to tell you that public education is a modified behavior. Whatever they're choosing to give you as a service, you have a right to have credit for it. And so therefore you have to challenge the district. They have to offer you something. They just can't keep them enrolled and paying themselves and paying the salaries of all these people and then give you no credit. What is that? I mean, I told you, you want to come in my show? Are you dressed?
Yes, I'm in your. I'm dressed.
All right, let me see if I can invite you, and then we'll get you off the phone.
Yeah. Um, but I'm just having a hard time with this school and stuff, and trying to calculate what they're teaching him and what he's learning, and how come his case managers haven't seen that he's behind and trying to get him caught up. They're not.
Well, Sherry, I
Because
told
right
you,
now he's not even at 60 credits. You need 60 credits leaving ninth grade.
yeah, but
And he's at 45.
I told you, you have to. What do I told you have to do? You have
I
to
got to
challenge.
tap the district.
That's right.
So that's coming back to Sacramento. Oh
Right.
my God.
Well, I mean, because that's where the credits were offered, and they were supposed to write them out, to talk about how the services were being provided, and that is your requirement. I mean, parents have to almost be, you know,
Like a fly on the wall.
no, like an administrator, because you're administering and ensuring that the services are happening to you for your kids. But when your kids are not getting credits, what are we saying here? Because that's just a part of the harvest, the plantation. And you have to stand up for your own rights. And so, I mean, think about these young people with 4 and 5 kids, how much money they're actually generating for the local people. Because just you by you living in a community, you're generating resources for that community because you're counted in the census, and the federal government gives back local communities dollars based on the needs of their community. And so, but when you don't ask or demand any accountability, I'm confused. I don't even know who people think they are. We have to do it.
Right.
But how we do it? Okay, it says I can bring you on camera now. Let me see. I'm touching it. It's my damn thing.
I just requested, so I see you.
I see you too, but I'm trying to push it and approve. It said I approved it. It's adding you now. Now we're together. I got my iPad outside and I plugged it in so it didn't run out. Okay. Well, it says it's adding you. So I don't know how long it actually takes. So, but we've been doing this even in Sacramento City Unified School District for a very long time. And so what we have to recognize is that we have to have a louder voice, and our voices are critical. This is adding it, but it's just not doing it. I don't know what it's doing. And so, anyways, it says it's doing it. And there we go. It says no answer from you. Ain't that nothing? I'm going to do it one more time. Huh? That's crazy because they really get to choose how you can engage in your local community by these policies that are applied through the administrative network administrators. I mean, always know that there are thousands of people perhaps watching you across the world, as live stream is just about that, engaging in your local community and how you actually can help empower others to be like you. But none of this happens without you understanding the rules, and the rules are everything. The rules demonstrate your ability to demand a level of effectiveness from the system that is being provided as mandatory. So let's get this all right. We have to understand the compulsory nature of public services when we look at education. It just keeps on saying, you maybe have to do it from inside your program, Sherry, because it's not letting you do it. But the real deal is, I think you requested it, and then I sent the invitation, and then it said that, I could bring you on camera, and then every time yes, yes, okay, I don't even know. It said they can't bring you on camera, that's what it says. Anyways, let's just keep on talking. You can call me back if you can't get on. Just get on my phone again. Because the real deal is that they don't get to control who we are and how we are able to become empowered. And I'm going to put here, it's not letting you come on my camera. It's not working. Working. There we go. Now everybody can see it's not working because I did push add. And it says they will receive an invite to join you. And I push that. And then it says it can't bring you on camera. That's what it says on the top. I don't know if you can even see that. But irregardless, for Caleb, I told you that all Americans need to really understand, as an American, you really just need to understand the ability of your child to engage in the process and do task completion, as education is based on task completion. And every child has to complete a certain level of access, a certain level of the ability to do the tasks that are aligned for your grade level. And I've never seen such poor written public policy in regards to the public education system here. I mean, when I look at California's legislative materials that bring the offer of a free and appropriate public education to the community, it's very detailed, and it tells you the exact process, and the work looks almost identical to the Department of Education. But yet and still, when I'm looking at the legislation that's written that's supposed to create the pathways for educational support for children here in Nevada, that is some corrupt criminal stuff, because they write it to benefit the people who are doing the lackadaisy job. They write it to the people who don't want to have the responsibility to ensure that they're creating access to all children. And so therefore, they wrote in legislation, and I'm not lying, they didn't want to get teachers credentialed until 2026. And actually, according to the United States Code of Public Education, well, they decided that they didn't want to give the Department of Education any information in regards to the disaggregated data until 2024 or something like that. Either way, it's one way or the other, but it's pretty disgusting. And I just want to know, who in the hell is going to put their children in a not-for-profit organization that is not mandated to provide the educational equity and status of the Head Start programs? Because Head Start really teaches young people how to engage in society. That's a part of nation building. You know what I'm saying? You understand what you have the right to have when you have your children in a Head Start program, because they're participating in the circle time. They're learning how to cut scissors. They're learning how to do all these tasks that they have to know before they get into kindergarten. But I mean, if your kids ain't never been in a program and just been in child care all this time, and then if you're not working with them, parent, if you're not doing the work, then nobody else is doing it. Just want to guarantee that you understand that. But putting your children in a not-for-profit agency that's third party and has no obligation to ensure access happens for you, well, what's been happening all of these years? IDEA, 2004, and all of the interventions and all of the public services that are guaranteed under the Department of Education. What happened to all that wonderful stuff? Because, I'm going to tell you, that wonderful stuff, it really does exist. And I will tell you that public education is actually a gold mine. And I bet you didn't know that. Because you wouldn't know simply because if your life and your journey's been difficult and your children are not thriving, well, of course you wouldn't know. But if you understood the rules and the intent behind public education initially, and the offer of faith, and understand why those people are getting paid out of public tax dollars, and who in Las Vegas is actually generating the federal allocations that Nevada is paying to the federal government. All those beautiful black performers, which ones I'm talking about.
the hits, the people who get on Regency, on the Strip. It is no, there was a black club. It's called the Oasis, I believe, just now opening. And believe me, hopefully the people from the historic West Side and people up in Anthem and Summerlin and all of those other areas that the black folks really don't live in, but they're black folks with money, because we have millionaires and billionaires up here on the hill. And believe me, lifestyles of the rich and famous really look out the doors of Las Vegas and seeing the city lights and how beautiful it is. But then living secluded enough and privileged so that the schools in your area only servicing like 10 or 15 children, but adequately providing those services in the rural areas. But unfortunate to the urban areas, however, the underdevelopment for the services in the urban schools is a reality, as people have just become to accept below basic and far, far below basic and below basic as a natural occurrence in public education. But once you get below basic, that means you're not with the rest of the pack. That means you're not getting supported anymore. And that means you are a nuisance to the problem. So now they have unique terms like, what is it? Habitual delinquent. What is a habitual delinquent? Please help me. Anybody who has the answer to what a habitual delinquent looks like, type it in there, or just send me a message, because I want to know what it looks like in an 11-year-old who can be expelled permanently from their public school for understanding that they may live in an area where they could have the ability to actually qualify to that, attend that magnet program or that Zoom school or the Victory School, as these are schools of executive intelligence. I'll put it like that. And then people know how to get into these programs, and then they get their children in these programs, and they're living the champagne life, living that champagne life. Y'all know what the champagne life is. I mean, it's a life where you don't really have a lot of struggle, and you're paying your taxes. Yes, you, Mr. Taxpayer, who never complains. Well, even if you did, it really doesn't matter, because the complaints go unheard. Because maybe your local community has not looked at services and outcomes on a whole for the disaggregated data, for the data that the state is providing for your area that you live in, to demonstrate that they're actually giving you equal access to the services that we are all paying for. And black man across this nation, black man who is in entertainment, black man that is so gifted and divine, paying taxes to the American public system, and denied the ability to share the concern of public hangings, basically. I mean, public murders. We've witnessed so many open murders simply because of the fear of public education really not working for all children. I'm live streaming on my iPad, and I'm talking to the people who actually is my neighbor, Bob. He's over there. I can't know if you see him. There we go. Hey, Bob. That's my neighbor. And the backyard is a wonderful place to live stream because the sun is up early in the morning. It's nice and warm out here. 6:30. Oh, you're working already. You'll be ready for lunch.
I go at 7:15 to 8:15.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go at 2:15 to 3:15 in the afternoon.
In the afternoon. Well, that's good.
2 hours a day.
Well, I wish that they could really pay you for the value of that employment.
Nobody crossing.
Huh? There's nobody crossing.
It's
Well,
too cold.
yeah, it's too cold, and then not only that, because of the COVID. All right, have a great day, Bob. So, this is America, and what can I say? The importance of understanding who you are is the importance of your understanding how to share the message. And the message is that of one understanding truly the relevance of the journey that you've been on. So my relevant to, anything that's relevant to what I have to share right now in 2021 is that public education is not free. It requires the parents engage in the process and measure to ensure that the maintenance of effort. And they say, oh, maintenance of effort. Yeah, I was talking about maintenance of effort. And they want to act like it only has to do with the dollars allocated the prior year. But who? Let me tell you something, Boo. Here in Las Vegas, they can allocate the proper amount of money towards a school who is just not using that money. Hell, they have over 200 million in carryover from those programs that were not developed. And they need that money. You know why they need that money? Everybody should understand why they really need that money. Because of the victory programs and the Zoom programs and the other programs where they're paying people to provide services to people who really don't qualify for that. And then busing has been always the dilemma for black people as they've been attempting to bus children to resources, and the whole process of the busing is denying the family the educational rights to participate in those educational opportunities of those children, as they cannot afford to get over there and see what's going on with their children when they're not doing work completion. And I told you, the American education system is all about work completion. Did you complete the task? And from grade level to grade level, if you are able to do the work that is allocated towards grade level proficiency quarterly, I can guarantee you, you will move on to college and complete this journey, as the foundational skills that would be provided to children quarterly is measurable. But when children don't have access, and I mean that they stopped reading in grade 3, and by grade 6 they were not at grade level, and by grade 12 they were 5th grade reading level, and the offer of FAPE became an offer of a certification that you were enrolled in school for 12 years, and they did whatever they could do for you who could not pass the tests, who could not complete the work assignments, who didn't understand the value of completing this mindlessly process of whatever, hodgepodge here in Nevada, meaning that if you get through it, then you still have to go to the JC. And when you get to the JC, many of the upper level people were still assessed lower than what they're actually came into the university at. So, remedial support is being provided to so many. Because I think after you learn how to navigate and have the executive functioning skills and actually know what they mean, then you can navigate the system. Once you can read, you can continue to read and educate yourself. Do you have to have an educator? No, I believe that there are people that came through the educational system without having an actual formal education, as myself. Trial and error, understanding the process, understanding the tools available to people who are identified in need. And just think about understanding about all these people who are in these alternative programs with these wonderful community partners. And the community partners may be bringing what they said they bring, but the obligation for the district still remains in the district. The educational sleeve of public education remains with the teaching staff at the local school district. Well, how are they helping to help your child navigate this process? And how many blacks are actually graduating at the 12th grade level? As Barack Obama saved everybody and said pimping ain't going to be continuing to be pimping, because we're going to ensure that the states provide these young people with a vocational education when they don't reach 12th grade level graduation. And so many don't. I mean, even in the state of California, let's not pretend the vocational resources that should be aligned and still have to be aligned, as they let go of their responsibility to educate children to the 8th grade level, as the high school exit exam was only established at the 8th grade level. That's why I know and why I do what I do. Everybody has a journey. This is my journey to educate you, to ensure that you understand the empowerment for yourself comes from within you and what you're willing to do if you have a child. But guess what, boo? Even if you don't have a children and you don't never plan to have any children, you're going to pay them taxes that are helping to provide the services for the children that you may not choose to have. Period. And because of kinship, if you take a black child, you will not get the same resources to support that black child because you may be connected, a black person, as you don't know who you're connected to. But those rules should affect Hispanic children also, simply because they're here and taken in at the border as immigrant children without parents. Do you understand why? Many of those South American countries don't have educational systems. Wouldn't you be willing to let go of your child to have an opportunity to what? Become a doctor or a lawyer based on the child's willingness to discipline themselves and complete all the tasks? As that's happening in America, we send so many immigrant children choose to share dual citizenship and come back and forth to America. It is, after all, how they were able to sustain themselves. But black people, my people, y'all don't understand. Pimping ain't pimping. But the harvest never stopped. As we cannot have conversations about what should we be thinking about and who should get the recognition and who should speak for who. And I'm going to tell you that in America, the system is the system, and every American has a personal responsibility to ensure if they're paying taxes, that it continues to provide access for the children who look like them. That means everybody's involved. But let's talk about this famous thumbprint. Remember that black thumbprint that we went and fought for those people over there on the other side of the world, and they came out and they were so proud to have that ink on that thumbprint? Perhaps in America we should end all this partisan shit and everybody vote by their thumbprint, choosing to declare whatever they believe in. Vote by what your level of knowledge is. That's what America says. And if you're lied to and you believe it, oh, well, boo, happy day. You know that song? Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. When Jesus walked. I don't know about all that. Because you can't have faith in a system that is denying you the same resources and allocations and services that are not working for your people, and then deny you the ability to critique the program and the services that are being established in your community by prohibiting you from critiquing the people who are giving you services. Really? Only in America? I doubt that. I really doubt that only in America is that happening. So, in America, as we are, living in a nation, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as for the justice arm, the public services that are basically impeding us from being successful, from creating opportunities for the people who look like this, based on, what do you want to call it? Propositions like Prop 209. What did it do to the black people? Well, guess what? It did not mandate that the state collect the information and the impacts and how it impacted the local community when they implemented Prop 209, and then they didn't have to look at race as a factor when they were distributing all those wonderful contracts under the federal government. I mean, understand, in Ferguson, let's not pretend, go back, look at the city council records during the time when Mike Brown got killed, and understand that the city council knew the demographics of the city council was going to change, and they rushed to go ensure that they could control the resources for more than 10 years after the death of Michael Brown. That meant the federal dollars coming in to provide services in that local community would not change hands, and you could not do anything. But, let me tell you, boo, Just like we change administrations, those contracts can be reviewed. And if they're not meeting the standards of the allocation and support that they're determined to do, well, they can be reissued. Only in America, just like you have a right to choose who your provider is in the public education arena. So, a lot of people would like to believe that public educators can say, oh, he just didn't do the work. I can't give him a grade for the work that he didn't do. And I'm saying perhaps he didn't do the work, but what is his capability of achieving and completing the work? That's what I'd like to know. How did you understand your obligation for a free and appropriate public education look like measured and monitored support that documents that whatever you're really offering to the child is actually working? And that's the wonderful thing about an individual education plan under special education. And I did not say a 504, which would be accommodation perhaps to ensure that the wheelchair access was correct or certain tools were offered in order to ensure access. But the real responsibility of engaging the educational process comes from the local district. And they get to choose a curriculum. They get to choose how the support looks. And you, my friend, get to choose the effectiveness of the tool. And how we have continued to exist in allowing one person to speak for all of us as a mass of people, I'm sorry, that's not working. So I'm here to tell you that you need to do you as an American citizen. What can you do and what do you know how to do? And if your child is failing, or if they've given you notice that your child is below basic, well, what is going to be the offer of support that they're going to provide the child? Because once the child is below basic, that's where they stay, truly. They stay there, and they don't ever promote upwards. So what does it look like for a child who's below basic? Well, they're complaining that the work is too hard, that they don't understand what they're supposed to do, and that they're not getting it. Well, what does that mean? Perhaps that means that an assessment should be done to determine what could apply and how could we create an easier process to ensure that we're getting the work, we're understanding what we should do. And I'm sorry, Boo, you just saying that they're not doing the work? Well, you first must tell me what you did to ensure that the comprehension and the analysis of the instruction of the work was actually provided by you. Mm. People seem to think public education is a gift, and it is not. Black people have truly paid for the right to have access in America. And regardless of you not knowing who I am, Darlene Anderson, not understanding my journey, what I've done, how I've been able to support my young men, how my young men are not in prison, have never been in jail, the criticalness of understanding who you are, not risking your public safety, operating under the wire as you understand what the rules are, and enabling to access those services when you truly need them is critical in America. Getting on the waiting list for housing, creating jobs for young people who would need to have the training to support their families, and that's just creating an opportunity for individuals. And how successful have you been at that basic, thing? How many people are getting the benefit from the investment of the dollars allocated by the federal dollars that are being paid out of public? They collect these dollars here on the Strip. And I bet you Mike Tyson, first time he ever voted, acknowledged that in his life. How many fights has he fought? How much federal taxes have been taken out of his winnings? Somebody help me with that. Any black entertainer, help me with the money that's being generated to the federal government. And even the $2.3 million that I like to refer to when I talk about Lauren Hammond was paid out of back taxes because she failed to pay. In her defense, she attempted to try to explain how she was supporting her family, but guess what? She didn't use her family like Donald Trump. Advertisement, employees, all that. No, she was just gifting the money, and guess what? She didn't get no tax write-off for that. But boo, when you understand the rules, you get the tax write-offs. So then you have babies that are newly born advertising, who you are, being a part of your cover, being a part of your crew, paying people for a demonstration of service. And I'm understanding up to what, over $12,000 a year could be given to family members in the essence of work or whatever and writing it off. I don't know. I don't know. I never had to do that because I never made that much money. But I know one thing, if you win some money, you're going to pay some taxes on it. And so if you win over $200,000, you're going to pay your $20,000, over $20,000 in taxes. And that's federal taxes. That's the money that comes back to your local government based on the number of people that you actually count. So, the count is critical. But when you undercount any subgroup, it affects your ability to provide services for those children, as in the city or state or whatever. And I need to understand how Nevada plans on giving up all these not-for-profit agencies that have $1 million to co-invest in not-for-profit agencies for early education up to the age of 4. And what is the accountability of this third-party provider? And how will they provide services to the children who may have disabilities? I don't know. But how are they demonstrating that they're providing just basic services for families with children with disabilities? As they have not signed the legal assurances that require local governing boards to ensure that access is really happening for those children and data is actually being provided to demonstrate that in lies success. And no, it doesn't. Because for the unfortunate understanding that here in Clark County, where they have the lowest student achievement mixed to the bottom, is Las Vegas being the 5th largest school district. And think about the impact of the dysfunction on America as the offer of a fake codes to the local governance. And therein lies the responsibility to ensure that access is happening based on the federal standards of public services. So therein lies the complicated, it's complicated, pretty complicated, but not really. And not really when you think about who you may be as an American citizen. Who might you be? I don't know. You could be anyone and still receive the same level of neglect when the foundational services don't demonstrate that they're creating access adequately for all peoples. So, I've asked, what would you do? Or what are you going to do differently? What are you doing differently in 2021? Numbers 2021 and send it. Because if you don't choose to do something differently and you don't understand that there is a lack of representation for the taxes that are paid on behalf of blacks in America, as Kaepernick chose to stand up and deliver a concern why he couldn't be out there on the ball field playing, knowing that things like happened to Philando Castillo with his one and only love and his baby, a daughter that he had accepted and was planning to marry, and help me with the commitment of this young man who had found the true love of his life, and for him to be murdered in front of the woman that he loved and his child, and him trying to be a rules follower. Help me with that, because the officer had to know that he was licensed to carry a gun and knew and was paranoid from the moment that he walked up there. But if there was no evidence of discontent or behavior in his analysis of the rundown of the man prior to him pulling him over, meaning that all of the information that's shared on the internet, they have already analyzed who I am. They've analyzed who you are and don't think you can hide, because the policies that are applied to your devices are real. And they can stop you. They can feel you drive up There's some, I mean, it's jokes in 2021 because you are not in control, but you are in control of what you are aware of. And so in 2021, my challenge too is not to read a book. My challenge to you is to understand that in 2021, we are America. And living in America, there's a responsibility, the personal responsibility to ensure that access is happening for the people who look like you. And that's a responsibility of personal awareness. We all have to understand that falls on us, even if you didn't graduate from high school, even if you can't read or write. Because once you become engaged in the process, then you can speak on what's not happening. But if your people are not talking about the impact of the lack of oversight and the function of public services and the outcomes and the lack of maintenance and the inability to share concern of true failed services and the inability to control. I mean, I would hope that every black performer living in Las Vegas would visit the new black-owned club and then, support them in engaging the black community and understanding that we are still connected, you know, because Nipsey said somehow we became disconnected, and we did. We became disconnected when people of means decided that, they didn't have to look at the people without means, because they didn't want to share, and they, rightfully so, they don't have to share, but you do have to give back in America. And you're going to give back, and regardless of what you want to give back or not. But if you're paying those taxes without sharing a concern of the maintenance of effort, that's the problem. But then you've been told if you get political, perhaps it might affect your ability to continue to make that money. And that statement was a message that was understood in the black community. That's i.e. we have house niggas and field niggas, and that's just real. Clark County commission meeting. They're having a commission meeting in Clark County. I wonder what they're going to say. I got my cell phone out here. I can get to listen to some of it, understanding what might be going on. And it's just real. Because, engaging in the process is real. And understanding how services are linked. Because somehow the county is providing all of those redirection services that are allocated through the harbor. And those are social and emotional services, and supposedly those services have to do with modifying behavior. But the academic content side, that side comes from, where am I saying? It comes from the local school district, comes from the obligation to ensure that a free and appropriate public education is afforded to all people. And that is just a basic obligation. But what does that look like? And what is the impact of the lack of educational ability to engage in the outcomes of the maintenance of effort? And where's the dialogue? And where's the conversation? I mean, it's not about trying to fight to have access. It's about demanding a certain rigor over academic services provided to the people who look like you, and that the offer of a real, true opportunity to have a life, liberty, in the pursuit of happiness. How can you pursue something that you don't have the ability to objectively achieve because you lack the basic skills? And that's just real. Even in advocacy, if you don't have the knowledge, what are you really sharing? If you don't understand what's going on, and if you refuse to open the door to your community that would concern themselves about the lack of maintenance and lack of services for the people who look like you, is a real reality. It's not starting yet. And I don't know. I wish I knew where to go get their agendas, what I would like to know. Jay's on. The FBI director is testifying on Periscope. And, in March, Periscope is moving to Twitter. So you need to have an active Twitter account to stay engaged in. Anthony Hamilton is getting ready to go on live right now at ZIFM radio. I mean, you get announcements by what you choose to track, and then we are enlightened because we do not have to depend on, whatever, the limited services that would be offered in a local community, because you have a right to benefit. And what does a right to benefit look like? It's critical that we understand the right to benefit looks like measuring how well the people who look like you are benefiting from the outcomes. And that conversation should have never stopped. Actually, it stopped. Actually, when it started, it stopped. Because as soon as they start realizing that we could empower ourselves through the Black Liberation Movement and the Black Power Movement, and we had actually had a lot to do with the foundational services for SNAP benefit program and the breakfast food, the lunch program, and here we have housing offered, all these foundational supports that built, a reason to use our tax dollars to help uplift our community. That happened, and it happened very quickly. As I am 62, and there are so many people, so many laws that happened between my lifetime. And just how do we demonstrate that the states are actually having the ability to engage with the local community and afford them the ability to have a conversation about the maintenance of effort and how well they're providing services, because you just don't get to claim the money and claim because you were there the longest period of time that you get to continue to have the work. No, not when you're not helping anyone. And when you're destroying by maintaining that you are the one that needs to be the provider, yet and still you cannot provide the outcomes for the services that are being allocated. I'm sorry, boo, then that's just saying that you ain't the one. And the beauty of COVID was that we are awakened now, and the understanding of who we are means that we have to share an understanding that perhaps services are not being adequately aligned in the local community. And we have an obligation to share our concerns individually. You don't have to be a part of the NAACP. Although I pay my membership dues, they don't even send me the magazine. I mean, whatever corruption's going up there, meaning that they feel that I don't have the right to share my concerns as an individual citizen in helping to uplift the community. But you can only share what you know. And boo, you can't work in an area where you've never been. And therefore, i.e., you may not know the impact of the negative inability to provide advocacy and the inability to open up an organization to recruit local people to help provide adequate oversight and engage in conversations, because you don't know what you don't know. But an educated person would understand the lack of the ability to share concerns about the lack of maintenance and oversight for the public services for the people who look like you, and it's demonstrated in the data. Therefore, i.e., we do not have a conversation about failures that are documented, as if you don't have the data that demonstrates that you're doing the work that you claimed that you were doing. So, i.e., therefore, accountability from the federal government must be demanded from the people who are being most affected, and that's my people. So, I filed a complaint with Clark County School District. I said, I'd like to know what academic services are being provided for the children who are enrolled in the harbor, as they have represented the harbor as a scholarship program, and that they're taking so much money and moving it from the public education to pay for the people who are working in this whatever behavior, social standards accepted, reality check failing, as they continue to grow the public prison system across this nation. Understand that we do have prison industries which represent making furniture or whatever, license plates, or doing some of the state's work as we're incarcerating people and keeping them for long periods of time. And they're providing, workforce, free workforce for the state as an investment. I guess you feed them, but you're not allowing them to grow themselves, to empower themselves, to become independent, and they're denied the right to vote as long as they're incarcerated. Really, really, come on now. Well, who speaks for them then? Nobody. The people who are providing the services want to keep their jobs without a maintenance of effort. They would like to keep that employment, overseeing your harvest, as you're being denied the right to share concern in the lack of outcomes and the investment in the American education system. Everybody has a role to play. And if you're a taxpayer, your role is to question the lack of services that are happening for the people who look like you. And regardless of the programs that were created, we want Americans to be innovative, creative, and empowered. But we don't want to restrict certain people based on their inability to access early requirements in education because there is no catch up in public education, meaning that once you're just bypassed, unless there's an active opportunity to engage in where you are, to move forward and prepare a plan. That's what that individual educational plan actually means. That IEP is so critical because it can demonstrate every level of attainment as a student continues to progress forward in life. And that's just so real. And I can't tell you how many people were involved in my son's life as they stated that he was severely mentally retarded, communication handicapped, and would not benefit from public services. And what can I say? I beg to differ because that's not how it turned out. Graduating with a one-on-one aid, a laptop, and above proficient, his public safety is still at risk as America is so dysfunctional. And if he ever got in a situation, it would be a misunderstanding. And I know who would get the benefit. As that young man who was having a crisis, who was buck naked. So they put a blag over his face and everything, and they choked him out, and they gave him some drugs trying to calm him down. Please help me with all of that. They're not mental health professionals, and they're not doctors. And they're not qualified either to work with children with disabilities or even humans with disabilities. Where are the services that provide real, true access in a growing city like Las Vegas, and how quickly it evolved, but how few are moving forward? Very few. Yep, this is America, and it's only America. And, you need to pay attention to the young people's music. You need to understand leveling up is real. Living that champagne life is real. Living my best life. I ain't got time to deal with you niggas is so real because you can isolate yourself and live in your box and pretend that nothing is going on around you. Yet and still we all witnessed the insurrection at the Capitol. Yes, we did. In which we saw American citizens who believed that perhaps they had the same rights to govern as the elected body that's governing us all. And they were actively committing treason on January 6th in a nation where the world has been forced to watch the public execution of George Floyd as he was suspected in passing a bogus $20 bill. His life became so invaluable, right? He wasn't just arrested, no. They had him in handcuffs more than once. It's all that extra that people get to do, this dominance thing that people with psychological problems, I believe, really have, because they're the kind of people who do this to a lot of people before they're caught and stopped. I don't ever want to have to be in a situation where I have to deal with one of them people, as this is America, and we are presumed to be free and innocent until proven guilty. But that is in the eyes of who? Certainly not the overseer. And who's the overseer? Well, hell, I think we all know who the overseer is. The system exists. Don't cry about it. Engage in the process. We need more voices in the people who allocate services like you, like me, like we, because I know we exist out there, but we ain't doing our due diligence, as we have churches and political organizations who have not been strong enough to drown out the lies. Hell, they began again. Donald really didn't lose the election, right? How dysfunctional is that? He lost. The peaceful transference of power didn't happen. And when the Democrats won the election and actually won the popular vote and actually lost the election, that's when we should have been pissed off and perhaps stormed the Capitol. No, we didn't do that because we're not those people. I don't see myself as trying to be a ruler, but I do see myself as understanding what advocacy looks like, understanding what my role in America is, understanding the individual power that I perceive because I can read and comprehend, and everybody has to follow the same rules. The same rules that are written for you are written for me, and that's just real. In 2021, more people are capable of understanding the process and realize that the process has to be really broken to affect the dysfunctional inability to provide a demonstrated maintenance of effort and services being allocated to all children equally, as they are not, because they've created this whole different system in which children who have behavior problems, who would seem to be, what do they call this, um, habitually delinquent or whatever, dysfunction. That's real. It's getting warm in the sun. And so the reality is that we as Americans truly have the obligation of being empowered and understanding what empowerment looks like and aligning ourselves with people who think the same way as we do, like-minded people. This one's not going to work. Move it away from there. There's a camera. There we go. Uh-oh. iPad is not sitting. I put it on the box. Whew. Having a hot flash. Those things will never be over either. But the curiosity isn't killing us as a people because we're showing no concerns of the inability to have general conversations, and even through the Black Caucus, they should be, I feel, because there's not every state has a Black Caucus representative, but they can have a representative appointed by the state to participate. And the maintenance of effort and outcomes for the investment of public services for the people who look like us. That's what it should be. But when it's not, is the problem. When it is not demonstrating that the same level of access is happening for your people as it is for all other people, and when it is overly burdensome with the rules that are perhaps not representing your people the same way as it would be representing all other people. I'm going to turn away from the sun and I just let you, I'm going to get it out the way because it's too hot. I'm standing over there. But the real deal is that in America, the obligation to ensure that access is happening comes from the organizations that are choosing to stand up and be engaged in the educational opportunities and outcomes and the maintenance of effort and actually having the jobs and the scope of services aligned and having those dollars allocated to people who can do those jobs in your local community, because that's critical. But what happens when it's not aligned for your people? Well, then you see people like to make excuses for why people are not making it. And I'm telling you, there's no excuse, as the services that should be aligned in your community should have some fault tolerance, meaning that they should have some things that happen if certain things are not happening. And the consequences should be written within the state guidance and state policies that would ensure access happens for the people who look like you. But what is this that I'm seeing? When people would like to keep things the way that they are, and they feel that they're doing a wonderful job, but they're not being inclusive of you and your due process rights. As a people, the insurances and the legal assurances that access is being provided to you is under due process. And no state has the right to create policies that actually, impede or oppress a certain subgroup of people, as the policies have been written within the state of Nevada are truly oppressive to people in poverty. So therefore, the conversation needs to happen. What is the state's actual intent? I mean, is it the intent to ensure that the system be sustained? I believe in public education also. But the reality is that when public education is happening, the public has to be engaged in the outcomes and the maintenance of what the investment truly is. But if there's no outcomes and your inability has been stifled and you don't have the same ability to critique and criticize the job performance that's being provided for the people who are living in your local community, I'm sorry, it's not working. As an American, you need to demand a higher level of accountability, and that's not coming with your organization, is it? So it's got to come from you as a taxpayer. Wake up, America, wake up. Even if I had to do this posting every day and save my videos and attempt to ensure that you understand that as a people, the subgroup that is identified by you people need to have a conversation, and the conversation must be within the people who look like you, because people looking in from the outside, jealous seeing. They don't even understand the resources allocated, and then they determine your level of access. I don't think so. It's not how it works. Everybody has the same right to the level of access and the quality of services that are being provided. And failure is just not an option unless you accept it. So I don't accept failure. That's something I don't accept. But, and that's why we have to have these conversations, because there seems to be a limited capacity or ability to share and to critique the services and to align and design services that are beneficial for the people who look like you. I don't know why Nevada is the entertainment capital of the world yet, and we can't recognize the old, you know, the Cotton Club and all the other performers that actually helped to build Nevada as the entertainment capital of the world, and how black people come and perform on the Strip all the time. I mean, you know, when Diana Ross comes down there, I'm sure she's still paying federal allocations, even if the people locally don't have to pay taxes. No, they don't. So the entertainment really generates a lot of federal dollars, as these people don't truly live here. But they do pay their allocation of federal taxes. So let's just talk about the investment, the taxation of the American taxation system on the black capital in America, because we're talking about capital investment. And so when they come here and perform, I just want to make sure that the acknowledgement of the dollars that are extracted from these people are bringing some level of investment in the black community, as we are still a gifted people. We're not dead yet. No. Black lives do matter. It's critical that we all learned our roles in America, as each person has something to give. I don't know what you have to give, what it's called trials and tribulations in America and in the world. And through trials and tribulations, truly you understand, for every trial you have achieved, that you don't have to go back and repeat that. That's a lesson learned and not a lesson burned, right? Because you have to appreciate everything you've learned in life, because it teaches you that you don't have to fall back in that area again. You know, you just keep on going. So I'm so happy that, you know, I have kind of like evolved to a grandparent status. I'm finally going to have some grandkids at 62, and maybe at 63, because, you know, it's coming. But the real deal is that in America, as an individual, what are you doing? You know, because if black lives truly matter, every black person in America should be sharing their concern with the lack of outcomes and lack of oversight that the federal government, who has given the rights to local states to educate you and create opportunity, but then have chosen to oppress and oppress you, and then limited your ability to share concerns. So, you know, forcing you to have these conversations very publicly in regards to the lack of maintenance and the lack of outcomes. But we know that our children are gifted. So, you know, if we're able to organize and provide, you know, they had started these micropods here in the historic West Side, but that was done in San Francisco and Oakland, in California. Because it's the ability to work with small groups of children who may be gifted or whatever. They don't have to have a disability. But, you know, you have to have knowledge that it's going on. And then once you get in those, I mean, these kids are still learning. They could organize their resources, and they receive, I think Donald Trump had receiving scholarship money to continue in their education, even though urban cities with larger populations of people were forced to close because they didn't have, they really truly didn't have any organization in the first place because so many kids were not benefiting. But what COVID exposed is that we have a broken educational system. And it truly is broken. I mean, even when I was acting chair for the district advisory committee and we had like the largest number of children, I mean, people who actually, you know, attended school site councils meetings, representatives from each school sent a representative. And then we talked about what was happening at each one of the schools, and the parents were actually participating. But these SOT teams, hell, they don't talk about, they're not being shared. They're not sharing anything. Only the principal and I believe the superintendent and a few gifted people in Nevada get to determine how services are happening. And so it's kind of crazy. Even the way that they do curriculum is paid for, and there's no written maintenance of effort in how they've chosen and who they've chosen as publishers to post these curriculum things online. And I mean, hell, if that's what they were doing, dittos and shit, before COVID hit, they really didn't care how, like, kids were making it because they don't really have functional IP teams here, I don't think, and because they don't have a local advisory committee for special education, meaning that all the schools don't have a representative that represents special education and how they're allocating the funding. And, that's part of the district responsibility to educate parents in regards to the monies that are allocated and the services that should be aligned with the state plan and guided by the state plan to measure the benefit of services to all children. And just know that black people are included, certainly. We're generating the same money. This is where the equalness comes in. Every child generates the same, or if not more, dollars to help provide educational support to the whole. What do we say when it's not happening for you and your people? And then they shut you down. But then the policies, they're very confusing. I wish y'all would get online and read the Nevada legislation and then start reading from the Education Committee, then start reading some of those bills and try to understand. I'm trying to understand how they even decided that they could write that stuff and put it up there and have an honest discussion about it, because it's very restrictive policies that are written. Everything leads to expulsion. And so once you're expelled, and even if they were leading to that, transitioning so many kids to these other programs, they still have to have a maintenance of effort for those programs prior to going to juvenile hall. And even when you're in juvenile hall, you still have the same rights and responsibility to a quality education. What is it looking like for you, boo? It ain't. And because it's not, well, therein lies the dilemma. Dilemma is real. And because we do have a dilemma in 2021 as to just who should be having the conversation. Every person living in America who breathes the air and stands on this ground should have the same conversation. Antonio, I'm on my iPad this time. You can't interrupt my live stream. I'm on my iPad. I'm outside talking on my stream. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, let me not interfere.
Okay, I'm just letting you know. All right. So.
All right, enjoy your morning.
I will. I'll talk to you later. Yep. See? That's how you have to get wise, because my sisters won't, they just keep calling. They were kicking me off my live stream. Here, I should do it from my iPad actually all the time, because then it's stored in my cloud. And it goes directly to my cloud. And I can still stream. And it was going to go to the cloud anyway, because what you're doing on live stream is you're actually streaming live, and it's being stored on the server. You could choose to save it there, but it will save anyway without you. Just know everything you do, every little thing you do is tracked right back to you. Every little place you go, they know. And it's just so real when you really start understanding the ability for the data collection and the life storage, the life depository in the cloud. Because it's the cloud, then it goes to a storage center. And they have all these huge centers collecting all the data from all the American people in the world, and they're just storage areas. And it just exists, and it's just too late, and we didn't do enough. We didn't prevent it. Hmm. And as it's something that we didn't prevent, it is something that we need to have a conversation about as to when they're collecting this data, how they're using it, because it's a forever trail about who you are. And I do mean forever trail. So that's why everybody's afraid of getting chipped in 2021. Because in that, it's more than you just watching, wearing the Fitbit that's generating all your calls and everything through your phone. But the iPad actually gets your phones, calls. So I was downtown and my phone rang. And my son was looking for me and he said the phone was ringing on my iPad too. And I was calling him somehow, or he was calling me. But he said he kept on hearing the phone ring and he thought I left my phone at home. But no, it was my iPad. And so it was still ringing on my phone downtown, but it was ringing on my iPad too at home. So that kind of wowed me out. That kind of understood to the level of what they would like to do. And to the level of what they don't understand is everything that you've been forced to do in America, in other words, of protecting your own self. That's your personal responsibility. You have to advocate for yourself. When they're doing things to you, pay attention. You know that they're doing something to you. This radiation by the satellites and by, whatever they can hover in the sky is real, because they can hover over your property, do things to you that you really wouldn't really want to believe that they could do, because they think that they're gods. In essence, they have the ability to bring harm to you by increasing the EMF waves on your devices that radiate your area, hopefully causing you to have cancer. I don't trust anybody anymore. Not when I understand that the dilemma is just actually understanding that you're in control, and whatever you're willing to do, you can achieve it if you're willing to invest the time. The understanding of the process. Everybody has to understand that we're all operating under the same rules. So if your child's failing, then you got to do what you got to do. And there are resources available to you through the school district for assessments and evaluations. And if you just don't agree, you have a right to have another assessment. But they have to demonstrate, number one, why you would not qualify for the assessment. I mean, just because they're saying that it's not necessary, what they have to demonstrate is that you are benefiting. And failure is just not a benefit. I'm sorry. Letter grades of Fs are just unacceptable. And how do we deal with the failed public education systems across this nation for African American children? National issue, crisis, national crisis, as we Americans have allowed failed services. And, Thurgood Marshall said that we had to protect our interests. So, we were supposed to continue in the oversight process of ensuring adequate services are happening for all Americans. And I can speak for all Americans simply because the recommendation of assessments and evaluating services comes from the public school. And so, you have a district who has local schools. And each school is different based on what they've chosen to do in regards to providing services. That's how it differs. And so what they've chosen to do in regards to providing services is the uniqueness of that campus. But adequate access, due process. When you're there, you have a right to make progress. And you have also a right to know exactly where you are foundationally. So if you don't know where you are, how can you ensure that you're moving forward? Because the curriculum doesn't denote progress. Just because you have an offer of the curriculum and it's grade level appropriate, meaning that by grade level, the student is offered ninth grade curriculum. Well, what does it look like if he can't do ninth grade work? And that's just real. Ninth grade work is real. Adequate access is critical. Measurable common goals are legally binding once they're written within, the scope of the services being provided. And the realness of just understanding your ability that monitors the scope of services that you're getting provided by your provider. It's so much like a job description. Y'all understand how services are provided to children? It's like the job description of your employment. And as an individual, the obligation for the parent is to analyze the maintenance of effort, what they said your child was going to achieve by grade level, and then understand if your child actually achieved that. Actually had the ability to achieve, excuse me, the accommodations that were being provided through the allocation of services that they were paying for. That you asked everybody. I mean, people do get paid. I got allergies. I can't. I'm out here, but there's really nothing out here except for this bush behind me. It's not blooming, but it doesn't matter. Allergies are real. It's not COVID, that's for sure. And life is just wonderful. What can I say? Anytime you can just chill and have conversations. And you really don't have to, it doesn't have to be a face-to-face conversation, but I know what I'm talking about. So reality is, do you understand what you're talking about? What you're effectively attempting to communicate? And will it benefit anybody? And I say that if you have a child and they're struggling in the public school system, that there are true resources. And then them telling you that your child's not logging on or not getting the work done well, then the accommodations happen there. I mean, they have to create other pathways so that you can access and that your parent can enforce, the activity, ensuring that it's happening. But everything comes from overseeing and, when you were in, I'm sure if people understand the conception of church and people providing services in church and they're telling you got to invest and you got to keep on investing in your young ones to reap the harvest. Well, that's the same thing in public education. There has to be an investment so that we can reap the harvest of the investment in our children. And quite frankly, right now, I see a lack of investment in the black community as services are being allocated all around, but the services and the outcomes are not measuring the maintenance of effort, meaning that the investment that's being provided to our people is not reaching our people. As you know, when they have $2 million in carryover, understand what carryover means. Carryover means that they have $2 million, 200 million, I'm sorry, $200 million in carryover dollars that are going from the urban schools back to the district for them to reallocate the funds. Boo, it's not a joke, especially when over there in those urban schools where they have so many children who are not meeting basic proficiency standards, meaning that they're not even meeting grade level proficiency standard, and then the district is not doing any intervention, no. But they're going to talk about how they have $200 million in carryover, where the kids are failing. Wake up, boo. Hello. It said, open the door, knock, knock, because it's not working. So as an American citizen, you should be willing to share concern. As those children in those overly populated schools where failure is being allowed are committing criminal acts. And so when the state starts changing the rules and implementing rigid guidance to children who would be habitually, mean habitually, they've created these habits of delinquency at 11, that they could be expelled from their permanent school. Now, who at 11, how could they at 11 determine that perhaps you ain't going to get another chance? I'm just sick with it all. I'm sick with the limited, restrictive implementation of the federal dollars and the failure to provide access and adequate services to all children. That's what I'm sick with. And because I can explain it and break it down, boo, it is a problem. Because it is happening to so many black children who are being placed in restrictive placements with the zero accountability and no focus on the academic content that would lead them to an independent life. And it's just a problem. It is a problem we're suffering, especially in 2021 when we can't have them wonderful conversations about what's been gone wrong. Because I think shit just didn't gone wrong. What reparations looks like, what looks like access, boo, and what it looks like a violation of due process rights, boo. Okay, so hey, America only in America. No, it's not only in America. People just harvest whatever they can, and they harvest what you allow them to take. People take what you allow them to take, and they don't take anymore. But if you haven't established a process in which you have determined what you will do and how it will happen, and you can communicate from actually what they plan to do, and then just compare it with what they said they're doing. And they don't say what they're doing. That's just real. So if they never put it out there saying that they're doing it, they don't tell you what they're measuring. They don't tell you how they're providing support. But they're not telling you anything. So when you say, okay, I just like to know how many actual 11th graders exited the system in the last 5 to 10 years. How many 11th graders? Because it'd be like, in 11 years, 11, they might be 22 now. And what did they have the ability to achieve in those 11 years? How did you demonstrate it? Did you move them for your own public safety reasons, and then you provided them an optional pathway, something different? But honey, if you ain't got no evidence of nothing that you did, I'm sorry. Change has come. And change comes from the demand and the acknowledgement that because it was only at 11 and whenever that policy was achieved, and you guys got to go back and look and see when these policies were so restrictive but written chronologically from 2012, every time trying to avert a negative outcome that was happening within the local structure of public services. And then they just did not demonstrate the maintenance of effort that should have been implemented with the use of the dollars. As we all pay taxes, this is America. And, it's real. And we all have to understand the obligation for engagement comes from real, living in the present, not in the past. As I'm living in the present, I'd like to know those oppressive policies that you're attempting to implement, well, what were the outcomes supposed to be initially? Because apparently you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Now you're trying to cover it up, and I'm sorry, no, boo, it don't work like that. I don't like cover up. Truly, I don't like cover up. And that's just real. No, I don't want the free month. But it's just real. And we all have an obligation to ensure that access is happening for us, with us, and around us, because that's real. And who's overseeing anything? Nobody. Truly. Nobody's overseeing anything. And that is the problem. As we in America have our own obligation, personal, to level up. What did you do? What have you done? My phone is not acting right, so I'm rebooted. And what have you done to ensure that access is happening for people who look like you? And that's just real. Because if you're not doing it, don't think anybody else is doing it because it ain't happening. And if there's no pathway for you individually, my brother, my sister, whoever you may be, if the pathway has not been created in which you engage in the process of the maintenance of effort for the outcomes for the state, and I think the state has to establish a process in which people can actually participate, and how they can see that access and adequate access is happening for people who look like me and you. Because y'all can, we're not all the same, that's for sure. And everybody should have a level of understanding of what the state is willing to do in creating access that's allowing you as individuals to share concerns about the lack of oversight, the lack of engagement, the lack of monetization for services that are being provided in your community. And actually, if you're being prohibited from working within your local schools to ensure that access is happening for the people who look like you. What does failure look like? Understand whose obligation it is for the local schools and people who buy homes within areas to share in the concerns of the ability of the community, ensuring that adequate tax basis is established to ensure that support services are being aligned by building schools in those areas. How much are the local people actually paying for their homes in the areas to help provide services for the school? Or who's actually paying? Are the currently enrolled students who enrolled in the current school year paying for the construction of public schools in areas that they're building out here in Clark County? Because I think they're taking the money right from the general fund. And that's just confusing to me as they're refusing to maintain historic educational sites where perhaps a lot of children are enrolled who are in poverty as they continue to generate and generate and generate the dollars. That ain't changing. Understand me when I say that. It's not changing. It is measuring how well and how effectively all children are learning. The conversation should be amongst the black people in the state at state level because there is no other place to talk about it. At the state level, the state has an obligation to bring services to the local people. And the local people should be able to challenge the services that are being provided to them within the local community. And if they're denying you the opportunity to speak, boo, it is a problem. It is a problem that we all must demand from our United States Attorney General. That access and opportunity is created through the due process of the evaluation and determination of services allocated in any one local community, that everybody has access. But when people don't have access and people are lacking, and then you want to talk about how poorly the people behave because they're undereducated. Oh, no, boo, you don't get to talk. What did you do to ensure that access happened for them? No, this is not how it happens. That's how come it's critical that you understand the power within an individual, myself, yourself. We, the people, need to understand we are the people. And the individual responsibility comes from truly deep within. Stand up, level up. You know the song, level, 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 my, that's Stokely. Whatever his name is, Stokely, somebody. He sings level. And then, there's just so many wonderful songs that are out there that, really should be, hey, good songs out there on the internet. And you don't have to pay for any of this. It's all out there. And everything is free initially on the app when you get the app going. And then if you want to further branch yourself, then it becomes an opportunity to, you understand what I'm saying. It's real. And so, regardless of my Bluetooth, not want to act right over here. I'm going to have to go over here and connect it away from the iPad. I want it to be over there. Just a minute, I'll be right back.
Yeah. So in America, life is about us, just truly us. It's about individually massive people who are counted within a census for the structure of public services. And every city, state, town, country, county is designed to provide services to the local people. And how that works is the oversight process comes from the people who would be engaged in the process, who truly are just responsible to ensure that access happens. And that's just real. And so, if it is not happening for people who look like you, the reality is that you, my friend, perhaps are not doing the work that should be done to ensure that access happens for the people who look like you. This thing don't even want to act like it's charging, and it's not. So, anyways, I'm just trying to tell you something. In America, the obligation to ensure that access happens, oversight happens, everything comes from individuals and who those individuals actually look like, whose services are being impeded, who's being disallowed the opportunity. These all conversations should happen locally across these United States as Black Lives Do Matter. And as we recognize that across the United States, Black people do not have the authority to concern themselves with the mass taking of life for people publicly. And even when it's done on camera, no justice be afforded to the people, and people being forced to see young people, Black people, through no fault of their own, just by circumstance, be murdered publicly. And this has been forever in America. How do you change it? Well, you first must voice a concern individually, and then at the ballot box, represent people who look like you, because that's where the Republican fear is coming in. Transition is happening. Black people are becoming involved. Let's not understand that we understood what happened when Michael Brown was murdered in Ferguson as the transition of the protests, and the young Black people were being more restrictively oppressed, that the city council was busy issuing out all those contracts to their third party people, people who had been getting the money always and wanted to ensure that those monies continue to come from the very people who were paying the taxes. And I'm just saying, they're controlling how our tax dollars are allocated, and they're also denying the right to ensure that we're questioning the lack of maintenance for services that are being provided in our local communities. So this is a nasty fly. I gotta go get my fly swatter. You nasty thing. Now I can't drink my coffee. You found the cup. Ugh, gross. That's why I wanted to have the fly swatter. He won't be back, I guarantee. Flies are very smart here in Vegas. They can see a fly swatter and they won't come back. That's a level of intelligence you might not have expected. Because these flies are very bold too. Land on your nose and you shoo them away, they come right back to your nose. So that's why you have to have a fly swatter. This is the danger weapon. It's control. Oh, goodness. 2021. What are you doing? And what have you chosen to do differently in 2021 as an American citizen? And understanding that April is coming. Taxation system that we're all engaged in, and how those dollars actually trickle back to your local community to ensure that access is happening for people like you. But if far too many of your people are not getting basic skills and basic opportunities, well then somebody's stealing your opportunity. And because you have historically been denied the ability to share concern in regards to the maintenance of effort and how well children are performing in your local community, as you can see kids struggling. And then you might want to share that you believe that African American history should be taught within the public school system, but when they're having projects to tell our children to think like a slave, what is that? What are you, who does that? Just tell me. I tell you what people do it. People who have never had to be enslaved. That's who we do it. But instead of talking about the ugliness of the American slave history and the continued oppression of the people who were enslaved, and the reference to the enslavement as being an oppressive thing, and the denial of the maintenance of effort of services that are being provided to your people based on your what behavior. I'm sorry, boo, don't work like that. If you're saying I have a behavior issue, I have a right to transition from whatever negative issue you have determined that I would carry. And then you have to provide those services that would demonstrate that we're working towards getting over that so I can still have access. No, you don't get to permanently take away my opportunity to have a free and appropriate public education and design a different system, separate and unequal. Access has been truly evolving in Clark County for a long time. So I just want to know who's championing that. Who is the champion person for the harbor in Las Vegas? How are they gathering the data from the demonstration of maintenance of effort and support provided to these children and transitioning them away from the pathway to juvenile halls? What kind of educational support is actually being provided to these children through the partnership with Clark County Teachers Association? Whoever, whatever. But if you're caught up, there ain't no getting out. Because once you're below basic in the public education system, there is no catch up. Do you understand? No catch up. No catch up. Understand? No catch up. Because there's no access for you. Because continually the offer continues to evolve, even if you never caught up. So you kind of like stay where you are. When they start saying, oh, below basic, far, far below basic. What is that? Well, we have to break it down. How do we break it down? Actually, in education, you can break it all the way down to how to create and format a sentence, how to complete the work assignments, how to learn in America. You learn how to learn. There are kinesthetic learners, there are visual learners, there are verbal learners, there are visual verbal learners. They're just kinesthetic only. There are people that have to touch things to understand how they work, have to use writing tools to write and repeat. There are all kind of different ways that people are empowered to learn to educate. But guess what? All the information you really need to be a leader in the area of education for your family is access to the net. And then access to ed.gov. And then understand there's idea.gov. That is ideal under 2004, and every individual child had a right to have an individual plan written to ensure that access was created, measured, and monitored by the group of people. And it talks about the group of people who would be involved in an IEP process, but I think it's only the principal here and one teacher, because the principal and one teacher can choose to expel or move a child out of a placement without having any assessment data. Meaning that just because they think it's you, then it's you. Just because they say it's you, then it's you. And it really doesn't matter because there's no advocacy aligned. And the requirements for the assessments and evaluations to determine what your level of engagement could be is not being done. So herein lies the dilemma. How do you challenge people who never really thought that this was something that they should be doing? Why should they do it? What is the intent to engage in the outcomes of the maintenance of services for the people who look like you? He came back and wait for him down there by my leg and get him. And so, anyways, reality speaks in 2021. Who are you? Ask yourself, what do you do? And what have you been willing to do? And just reality speaks. if you've never had children in the public education system, then I would like to tell you that you don't understand how it should operate. So, actively, local school districts should have conversations about the impact of whatever's happening in the local area in regards to access for children who are 0 to 3 years old. And if children are language deficient, or there's no common language spoken in the home, or if there's broken English spoken in the home, the assessments and the evaluations of children should happen within the local school district, because speech and language development and communication is one of the earlier services that are provided through early access. But when they have data that they don't demonstrate that they've even utilized, because they've been using some of this data to deny services for children, and move on and not allow them to start. But then when they do start, because they don't transition well from task to task, then talk about the disruption, document the disruption, and move the child out. Then that's when the habitual delinquents begin. And I'm sorry, none of the public money was ever designed to ensure that a state could document habitual delinquents. No, I don't even know what that means. I mean, it might be something that has evolved and written in documentation and rendered as a reason why children are not transitioning well, whatever. But wherever you get to, when they get you over here and they didn't documented you as being this, I'm trying to understand, well, how they hold themselves accountable to transitioning that behavior so it's not happening anymore. And actually, when they talk about a manifestation determination, and the meaning of a manifestation determination, to determine if whatever happened, did it happen around the area of your disability before they can do anything to you, before they can suspend. And there's a number of days that they can suspend. And certain children they cannot expel if it is determined that the children's behavior was a part of their disability. And actually, when we want to talk about disability, we really want to talk about ability. The ability that the child has to access in the evaluation of services. I don't know if I got them. I wish I did. But, and demonstrate that those services are actually happening. That's the wonderful thing about public education, because you can measure and monitor the support that a child is being given, the opportunity to ensure that access is happening, and to measure the benefit. And if they say your child has a certain behavior, you have a right to analyze that behavior from an outside psychologist, and you get to choose who your assessors are. And the state has to provide a list of assessors that have been accepted by the state in the process of demonstrating the area of disability in which they say you might have. But I haven't seen the list in Nevada of providers, as I don't believe that there is any structured level of support that they are actually providing, except for deaf and blind. Those are the major ones that they have to provide support to. And so I'm just telling you, this is America. And if we truly operate as a nation, then we have to understand that we have to seek the best and the brightest to have real conversations to ensure that we're not paying people for the lack of oversight. We're not paying people for the lack of engagement, and people don't get to pay themselves just because they decided that, hey, we're going to do this, well, it's my nonprofit and it's operating like this, and we just do this for everybody. No, but you don't do it for me. That's how it works. You got to know me to know what to do me, and the resources that are coming to the Black community in order to ensure that access is happening from them should be coming to the Black community to decide and determine the level of services and if it's benefiting, and what are the families actually requesting. I don't know, because they're supposed to do these assessments, surveys, to determine, are the people's needs being met? That's what we want to know. And if they're not, how are they planning to meet those needs? But the people who are affected by the offer of services are the ones that are supposed to be having the conversation. But if they deny you the ability to share in the concerns of the weighted formula that's provided to the children in your area, and then for whatever reason, your kids just never do the work. And so, what can I say? I'm going to say the kids who are below basic can't do grade level work because they can't access too restrictive, meaning that they didn't do any of the work to ensure that they were being progressed, move forward. And for people who are denied access to real services, and the state cannot demonstrate that they've actually had services offered and rendered, then they have a right to, get benefits, you know, awarded real services. As the federal government needs to be engaged in the lack of maintenance for the black community in Clark County, because blacks are just being denied because they have black people that they have elected, but those black people are elected representatives. They do not elect black representatives to represent black issues. No, it's still the black community. So individually empower yourself. If you're satisfied, don't say shit. But if you're not satisfied, figure a way that you can engage in the conversation and share your concern for the lack of maintenance and outcomes from the people who are employed with the tax dollars that are being provided for services for the children who look like you. Get in the conversation. There should be an organized effort of community partners to have great conversations. And that way we don't have to worry about this leadership issue, because everybody, nonprofit organization over here, another nonprofit organization over here. So all the nonprofit, not-for-profits come together, talk about the challenges of implementing services in the black community, if that's where they are. But when black folks are so coveted, and coveting, whatever they get, as it's a family lineage kind of thing, and something the family does. But the family has to be passing down the skills to access the resources, and somebody got to share the information with you. And if that's what's happening in our nation, then wherever the work is happening, those people need to have a conversation about the barriers to services that we still face even when we're coming together. But because we can't even come together, because they seem to want to give resources to elected officials to help support community members in creation of programs, but then that's the only focus there is. There's no focus on the outcomes and the maintenance of effort or whatever your kids will. All third graders should learn by the third grade, what all sixth graders should know by the sixth grade, and if you're an American, what you should know by the ninth grade. And by the time 10th grade graduation happened, the reality is understanding that the obligation is yours as an individual to question the lack of oversight or the lack of maintenance for services provided in your local community. And how do you educate people on that when they've never even seen the vision? And what does the vision look like? Is it just my vision? No, it's not. Because every person who comes to America, even immigrants, value the vision of education and understand that in America, you could be basically what you choose to be, if you choose to be. And that failure is just a choice, as it is a lack of understanding that you have the right to progress. So if you're not progressing, and it's not about you moving forward in America, then what is it about? Well, it's about the system that's already been created, and that is a system that's already been created, and people are paying for these resources to happen. And the resources are happening. I'm gonna go get me some water. And the resources are happening, but it's the lack of maintenance. It's the lack of outcomes. I'll be back in 1 minute. know one thing. The flies are not going to get my water. So, public education in 2021. What are you doing differently? I think we truly have a presence in the black media and black performance. We truly are still engaging in outcomes of the maintenance of public services as our talented 10th. We have a group of talented individuals that have always engaged. So there's always been a set of free black people. Black people have always been, making it on the other side. And then there's always been a set of black people who've been struggling their whole lives and don't see the vision. And then there are visioned people, people who understand what the vision looks like and can make it happen for themselves, because each one reach one, teach one, right? Every person is so critical. But in America, it's truly how we see ourselves and who we see ourselves as. And if we see ourselves as individuals, and if we see ourselves as pulling ourselves up all by ourselves, individually, irregardless of the gift and the opportunity to receive the gift, because the gift is the knowledge of your secure foundation. You're secure in whatever you know, and you have something to offer, and you figured out how to offer it, and the independent thought around how individually you can empower yourself, and that's just real. And so I did tell somebody I was going to do something. I need to follow through with it. Excuse me. But if you understand who you are, and once you understand who you are, then you can make a change. And once you make a change, you get to be different. And once you can do that, you can change the world, because it's up to you to understand who you are, to be able to share in the first place, who you are. And that's just real. I don't know, her name's not coming up there. What did you do here? There we go. And so, anyways, I'm going to tell you that the most critical thing that you can do in 2021 is, if you have school-age children, or you have children, your children have school-age children, is to understand that failure is just not going to be the option in 2021, and that we have to have this national conversation about the inability to communicate effectively about our concern about the failed programs within a local state, and how do we actually transition those families from failed programs into more programs that would provide a more adequate opportunity to ensure that life is happening for those people, truly, because it's not happening. And when it's not happening, that means that people are harvesting those children, and the lack of support and outcomes to measure the benefit has truly happened over time. So here we are in 2021, and we can look at the data that demonstrates that truly across America, black people are oppressed. And the question is, if we're being oppressed by public policies that are supposed to provide an opportunity, then we need to challenge the federal government to intervene so that we can take more control over the outcomes of the maintenance of service for the people who look like us. Our voices must be heard. And I'm sorry, Boo, I don't care who you are. If you can't bring a benefit to my child, you don't need to work with my child. And that's just real. So until we understand our obligation to do the advocacy, and understand that it is not the elected responsibility to do the advocacy, but it is our responsibility to organize our community and challenge the elected people to carry out the oversight function in which they are required to do under the law. So I don't care what color you are, Boo. Do your job. And if it's not happening, then therein lies the problem, because fraud is being allowed to happen in a great kind of way, to where so many people are being denied real resources through advocacy to steal, basically. People advocate to not have to provide. I mean, when you've got lobbyists, when this whole state is turned around, and you've got people who present legislation to the legislatures to try to get them to waive their opportunity to provide information for the receipt of the basic money for public education under U.S. Code, USC 20, whatever, 6311, whatever, ABCDEFNF, or whatever it is. But it's just how they don't have to take the money, but they choose to take the money, and because they chose to take the money, the obligation is to produce. But when they don't have that, and they created all these other pathways, ambulance, all these other pathways, so they can secure the money and continue to get paid, is a problem. Because then therein lies the ability to maneuver. And when they have $200 million in carryover from large environments where kids in poverty are failing, I'm saying, okay, that's the problem. How could you have 200 million in carryover when you have a 259% suspension expulsion rate for African American people? There's a problem there. And about the same number for Latinos and Native Americans. And so there's a problem with your data that demonstrates that perhaps you're not doing what you should be doing. And the inability to share the concern about the services rendered is truly concerning. But under, the Freedom of Information Act, and the resources provided to you living in America, you can go to ed.gov or yourstate.ca, california.gov, or you can go to ed.nv.gov in the Nevada Department of Education. But the states have to provide this information about how it's creating all these wonderful pathways for people who look like you. But when you and people who look like you get online and see that they ain't telling the whole story, then perhaps it's time for you to tell your part of the story and speak out, because they paying themselves for things that are not happening for the children who look like you, and our children are failing to thrive. So the failure to thrive in America is so real. And I don't know what else to say. Just a failure to thrive. What does that look like? Failing to thrive. Frightening. So I don't know what kind of day it's going to be. It seems like it's going to be a hot day. Just a hot day, and I'm just trying to see. We have our new patio furniture out here for my sister. And then we have this other that we bought. I'm trying to see. What was out? Okay. Okay. Let's see where the problem is. There. It was getting kind of hard to crank. That is better. Now I don't have to be in the sun. It was getting hot. And it's still March. That's still, early in the year. But you sit in the sun, still can get tanned. And still can get, whatever, sunburn. Oh, goodness. So, it's so real that it's not happening for the people who look like us. And it's so frightening also. We all should be terrified, as Black Lives Matter and Black people are still dying. I'm sure we're terrified of the vaccine and the history of what America looked like over time, and how they guinea pigged, and how they're sterilizing women in correctional facilities, and how people are just going to prison as people are working to create cases against them. And the understanding of the ability to change data in the midst of the screen. You know, because they were trying to say that we were downloading movies. I was never downloading them movies. And there's no way that I want to download a Sylvester Stallone movie. Because it ain't that. That's what it's not about that. And who cares? You can stream movies all you want. Stream any video. And they just collected that you streamed it. It's not against the law to watch it. It's against the law to download it. People know exactly what you're downloading because it's all saved in the cloud. And they're watching you all the time. And who cares what they know? They'll always think that they know more than what you know from your own head. But in America, the responsibility to have this very, very public conversation about public services and how well, since we were 155 years outside of the Emancipation Proclamation, well, how did we measure how well did the states do in creating the pathways for Black people who look like you? And is it happening? And if it's not happening, why do you think it is not happening if we are paying good money to ensure that access actually happened for people who look like you? Because, I mean, we're funding these initiatives, whatever they are, nonprofit organizations who claim to do business within our local communities and who are providing services to our children, yet and still there's no demonstration of the maintenance of effort that is provided to support to transition your children. They don't have the data. So that's what COVID demonstrated. Bring your data to the leader. Present it to establish services that you've been providing so that we can appropriately continue to support you, because you don't have to take the federal money, boo. No, there are states in America that don't take the money. There are counties in America, even within the state, that don't take the federal dollars. They fund schools other way. I don't know what they do. Regardless of when they're taking the federal dollars and providing a pathway for you, that pathway has to be real. Otherwise, you can challenge it, and that's what we're doing in this moment in time, challenging the system to determine access for individually, each one of us. And as a participant, a citizen embedded within Clark County, the obligation to me to share the concern of the data that is viewed publicly from the community perspective is a failure to provide services and access, adequate access for services that are being rendered in the Black community. As you know, Pastor Rogers and has attempted for years to have conversations with the district, and the district just refused. And then they have that, shouldn't use words, but there was this district staff person, and she was working within the office of the data, and presenting data that looked like 259% suspension expulsion rate for African Americans, and they felt that data did not have to be disaggregated or broke down, but yes, boo, it does. It had to be broken down to the point to demonstrate if there were children within special needs in the category that their civil rights were protected. And well, when we start looking at the data, the disenfranchisement, people just being disenfranchised is the word, disenfranchisement, whatever, not happening. Because looking at the data, they can't demonstrate that adequate access is being provided to people who look like you or me. Just, whatever. Principally, understand that in America, if you're innovative enough, you too can get away with fraud. That's why they have a $200 million carryover. Is somebody going to be surprised about this $200 million in this, carryover for monies that was not spent, dollars that were allocated but not spent, dollars that were allocated and not spend. And then we just have kids who didn't make it and who were transferred out of the regular education system based on their, what is that word I use? Some kind of delinquent, irregardless of understanding that all behavior is behavior and transition in a manner to supposed to be a better opportunity for self independence. And we don't even have any of that data, as so many of our kids are placed in these restrictive environments and they're not even being given opportunity to benefit from the offer of a free and appropriate public education. And just what does that look like? Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know. It might look like anything, and that's just real. Because in America, the obligation to create access comes from the people that understand what access should look like. And then take the pathway to engage the local community to build capacity to ensure that access is happening. But when you can't build it within your local community, it's a frightening thing because you're limiting the ability of the community to engage and have dialogue about the current maintenance of the services that are being conveyed. Just, paid out of your local tax dollars, because we all going to pay. We all pay in America. We all pay because we, as a people, the people, are the ones that are in charge of the outcomes and the maintenance of effort and the services that should be engaged in the process of the outcomes of maintenance of effort. And what do you choose to do? How do you choose to get involved in the advocacy of the outcomes of maintenance of services that are provided within the structure of public education as Black Americans? The conversation, it's within our people. Our people have the responsibility to engage in the outcomes of the maintenance of effort. And if you've ever participated in the PTA or the PTSA, or CASE was another organization that provided education, and school site councils locally are supposed to elect members, but besides electing the members, they have an obligation to also train the community members in ways of how they are going to hold the local people accountable for the maintenance of effort and the services provided within the structure. And see, life is about accountability and having the ability to engage in the process. And what does America actually look like when it doesn't look like? It looks like you and I are leading some of the major initiatives out there doing work representing America. But when it comes to representing local issues and community members and who gets to participate, it's limited and it's not measured. As the charge is, the money's coming down, generated by the people who look like you to benefit the people who look like you. But somehow, in the end, it looks like a $200 million carryover. What is that? When you have failed services that are being provided for the children who look like you in your own community, what is that? When children who are not reading by 6 years old, who are not reading by 9 and 10, who can be expelled permanently as a habitual delinquent at 11, and who, through truancy and busing, has affected all the policies that are actually, implemented to create a structure, but then there's no identifiable data that demonstrates that access is happening for the people who look like you, but because who are you and how are you addressing the issue as a community when you're not? And that's just simple as it is. For the people who look like you, somebody's already determined how those services are happening. And they don't need you in the conversation, no, boo, because they already took care of it. They already got it all set up. You don't need to get involved. But if you have to live with the services being provided, through your local community, then you should have a concern also about the lack of the maintenance, documented evidence that would demonstrate that the people who are providing the work is making a difference. But for people who are being documented as being dysfunctional, people who are being denied access and remanded over to programs that would provide social and emotional services. I don't know what that looks like. But to not use the structure of the medical profession to ensure that access is being provided to young people with perceived disabilities, structural disabilities, behavioral dysfunction. What is it? What is that? Somebody tell me. I'm looking for that definition of the, that word I told you, habitual delinquent, habitual delinquent. It's written in legislation. It says like at 11 years old, you could lose your spot permanently from your site where you were going to school. Where they counted your enrollment. It's just crazy. America's crazy because it all has to do with the services continuing to happen the way they've always happened, and the system to be established and sustained and measurable and accountable. Yet and still, that's not who we are, and that's not what we see. So we don't see measured and monitored services and outcomes when it comes to all programs. And for the few people that are been gifted the ability to, have the grant money and do the work, well, you can't do the work for everyone, as there's more people that are being denied the resources of having access to you, boo, because you can only help so many individually if the state has not made that a focus of the benefit. Mm. And as this is America, well then, what are you doing differently to make sure that we don't have to go to protest and demand Black Lives Matter, and that we don't have to continue to see public murders like George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery? And what about the young man that was shot 7 times in front of his 3 young children? Why did we all have to witness that? And then they try to justify the shooting, and then not to continue to press charges because it was a bogus charge in the first place, because we can't even get involved in relationships that people have, and they make promises to give people stuff, and then just because it says 3rd-degree rape, I don't know what that is, but then it said that he had taken her debit card, and I'm saying, okay, she could have canceled that. Why was that even an issue if he didn't have the pin? So there was just too much in that but just the mere fact that they had it in his file that he had violently, you know, resisted arrest before, so they knew to up his level, because, you do have level, like, you're a level when you're on the internet. And I'm a very high level threat, as the policies that were being applied to me as a user, no matter where I went, were being applied to my devices, no matter where I went, no matter what I purchased. And, even when it came down to, doing things to my printers to stop them from working appropriately, because everything runs by device drivers. But, this whole opportunity to align services and groups of people, and without you really understanding that you had been grouped and oppressed before you knew it, how your devices would do certain things and then all of a sudden change and wouldn't do anything more based on your user accountability. Your user has grades, whatever, and certain programs just operate whatever. You just have to keep on leveling up, understanding that you have to learn how to, you know, protect yourself, basically. So you have to have the conversation about whatever's going on from your perspective, what's going on. And from my perspective of what's going on here in Clark County, the inability of individuals outside the district having the ability to view critical information that demonstrates access is happening for all children doesn't exist, as there's no process established in which anyone really could critique the services being provided from any one school site, especially concerning since they had a $200 million carryover from the larger urban districts, urban and rural. Small schools that had the benefit of the more tailored, structured services and could demonstrate that those children are benefiting out there, lack the resources to pay the services that are being provided in the rural areas. That's just real. They created areas in which, they built services around instead of the other way around. So, and then they bus those children. And busing children just doesn't work in the 20th century. As, we've moved to different kind of learnings, and there have been programs that truly have been very good at doing distance education and forcing districts to work with people who know how to do the work is real, because otherwise we're just paying for stuff that ain't happening. So conversation is yours, the challenge is yours. What are you willing to do in 2021 that's different as an American citizen, as an adult and senior citizen, ensuring that young people understand that public education is not free, failure is not acceptable, and the responsibility to ensure that access is happening for young people who look like them is real. And if young people even just understand from where they came from, how many people actually dropped out of public schools, how many kids didn't make it, understand it's real, because the penitentiary is full of good intentions, but there's no pathway. And even if, a lot of people went to jail for marijuana, okay? I can understand that the opiate crisis is really a crisis, but it was a crisis in the black community too. Like crack cocaine was a crisis in the black community. What did they do to help uplift the black community from that? Now they're willing to invest all these dollars in the opiate crisis. What do they do for the black people? What are they doing for black people in the first place? How are they measuring the investment in the local black community, and how blacks actually having the ability to talk about the creation of real services and accountable services for the children who look like them? So wake up, boo, it's 2021. I'm going to have black elected people working within the capacity of an elected position. But as an American citizen, I have a concern about the failed services through the maintenance of effort and the lack of outcomes in the black community and the inability of people to accept what they're doing, and the dysfunction and disproportionality of black children being pushed outside of public educational services and different aligned services and separate and unequal. I mean, behavior is relevant, because all we're actually doing in public education is changing behaviors that are provided to all children, and equitableness and the inability of people to access all of the same resources, resources that all children should have access to. You know what it looks like. It looks like success. What does it look like for you? Maybe it doesn't look like success for you. Maybe you don't know what success looks like. It looks like adequacy. I'll put that word out there. Adequate, reasonable expectations of benefit. And when there's no reasonable expectation to benefit, there's a problem, because you're still paying yourself for the maintenance of effort. Oh, what is that word? And how are we using it? I'm not using it in the manner of the same dollars being allocated to the same number of children. As we can understand, you will allocate the money, yes, you will. But when you have a $200 million carryover, what do you plan on doing with that for all those children who didn't make it? What is the efficacy and the ability for the local community to share concern and the lack of outcomes and lack of maintenance in services of the children who look like them? Reasonable assurances, that's what we're talking about in America. Reasonably ensuring that access is happening for all of the children, be they immigrants or citizens, and perhaps nationwide, Americans need to talk about fighting for the people over there in Afghanistan and where we were fighting. They have that ink on their thumb, to put the thumbprint up. There we go. And it had ink, and it was purple, and it proved that they voted. And as that thumbprint is so valuable, when you have to go get your driver's license, you put that little thumbprint there. And sometimes when you go cash your check at Western, you got to put your little thumbprint there. It's tracking you. And, you're in a database. So don't pretend you're not. So let's understand who we are as in the database. And that the requirement and the advocacy and the ability is not limited to the number of people who voted Democrat, Republican, just the number of Americans who are voting, who are participating in the process. And we must work to ensure that more people have access to the process. You understand? Engaging in the political arena of the dollars and the maintenance of access and services that are happening for local community people. It's not a joke. It is just not a joke, boo. And that's just real. Oh, my son is doing something. Hey, it's real. And so, the realness of everything. And it really was the realness of Nipsey, you know, to talk about his life and his inability to engage in outcomes, you know, of he was making a difference from people who lived in his community, and he readily said he dropped out of school because he had to help put food on the table, and the expectation of him going to school and then being restricted within that grant if his mother got a little grant for income children, whatever, wasn't benefiting his people. And so, what he was doing and what he was building was incredible, but we didn't even really hear about it until it was all over, until he was murdered. That was the rest of the people. And that's just how it works. And that's how come, when people were running towards freedom, there were people who were running against freedom too. People who were just comfortable where they were and didn't really want to start no trouble. Well, trouble is just speaking out on what you believe in. And Wake Up America, whose obligation is it to ensure that access is happening for all people? Other people who are paying taxes, and damn, I'm saying, even if you're paying a little bit in taxes for public services, share your concerns about the outcomes and lack of maintenance for services, because it ain't you, boo. If your voice is not being heard, then you're living in this dilemma. What is it, Groundhog Day? Groundhog Day was all about the same bad thing, living in the same nightmare every day, waking up in the same nightmare. And isn't that where we are in 2021? We're living in the same nightmare. And the wake-up call for the reality is that the inability to transition to a different conversation opposite of failed services. And just the reasonable understanding that right now, with what I'm doing, streaming live, I can go back and save my video and download it and upload it to my YouTube channel. Hello, YouTube. Or I think that's the only way that I could probably share the video is download it, save it. You can talk as long as you want. All this uploaded storage is people just using your stuff to promote their channel and promote their resources. Everybody wants to get a click and advertising, the advertisement dollars that are generating in America. And then you have people like the Sacramento Bee, which I just truly was disgusted with because they just kept on raising the prices. And if they had an automatic payment, they would just raise the price without you even agreeing to it. It really didn't matter because the level of services they were providing wasn't really relevant simply because they wanted to provide you the news, but they wanted you to pay for it. And if you didn't want to pay for it, hell, they actively participated in blocking you from the news. Seriously? Only in America. Who in the hell gets to determine? Only people who have money get to pay. Participate. Apparently, that's what they say. Changes to Google Pay. I'm not using Google Pay. But in America, It's just you, boo. It's nobody but you. But if you ain't doing it and you expect other people to do it, well, I caution you. It is one of the major reasons why we have broken systems today. As life has just continued to move forward, and black people have continued to die and move on, and they move on. I mean, everybody, the soul passes on. And whatever the challenge was, what that person was actually doing while they were living and whatever, sometimes that just fades away also. And as we the people, have an obligation to we the people. And we the people doesn't mean everybody, people who you identify with. And understand that it doesn't take much for a lie to create havoc. As you know, the continued lying of the past president was annoying and disgusting and stressful. And every day to wake up to another unrespected vision of America, as you know, it was limited by his perception. And, you know, sure, he did some things that were different from other presidents. He engaged with people that were different than other presidents. I mean, you know, I don't know if Kanye West went to go talk to Obama, but if he did, he talked to Trump too. And they're just people. And it really didn't matter. Conversations that we all need to have, and that we all have the ability to share a concern. And the lack of maintenance and outcomes, these people just seem to to do the things. And the therapist is coming today around 1 or 2 for my mother. She'll get up. Okay, it's great. And so I'll get her up and feed her. But you know, we all get old. I dread getting old. I don't want to get old, so I'm gonna take more active role in, you know, preserving my health. So I get a little on side little bike and do a little bit of riding today, every day, 2 or 3 minutes. That's all it's gonna take to increase my energy level, and that's what it did. And I feel good, and I lost some weight, and at least I slimmed down here all the way down, and I weigh about 170, and I'm about 175, but I'm about 5'10". So I'm fit, and I'm going to stay fit because there's a lot of work to do. And we, the people, have to figure out how we do it, and the importance of sharing, and the concern of the lack of maintenance for outcomes, and the responsibility. Who does it lie with? It lies individually with each and every one of us as a taxpayer. Obligations do exist, and I don't care where you live in America. As long as you live on American soil, the obligation is yours to describe the inability. Oh, somebody wrote me a response. And so, and it's just good. I mean, you know, because I had a problem with the policies. And let me just respond to you what I got a response to, because I did get a response from the Department of Education under IDA. All right. What did they say? I don't want the PDF, actually. This one. I want it. Dear Mrs. Anderson, this message acknowledges the multiple emails that you have sent to the IDEA mailbox administered by administered by the Department of Education's Office of Special Education, OSPE. Is OSEP is responsible for the administration and oversight of IDEA grants issued to the states to implement Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. It appears that some of the concerns you forwarded involved issues beyond those addressed by IDEA. You may wish to contact the Nevada Department of Education and share your concerns about these matters, including these legislative initiatives in your state. Now, how do I do that? Because, you know, I can see there are problems with the way that it's written. But hold on, it says
With respect of implementation under IDEA in Nevada, the Office of Special Education and whatever OSEP has designed staff to respond to the questions related to each state. The staff member assigned to Nevada is what? Jeannie Norbit, Genee Norbit. You may wish to discuss and contact Mrs. Norbit to discuss your specific concerns related to special education in your state. And then it gives me her email, genee.norbet@ed.gov. So, Liz, thank you for your interest, including the children with disabilities, sincerely, and it's policy specialist. You know what policies are? It's the way they govern themselves. That's what policies are. And they mean nothing more than the way that people are choosing to implement the services. You see, the protections under the federal law are really real. And if you understand public policy and guidance, then you understand if you're right, you get to win. And winners always win. But there are people who are losers. And those are the people who choose to believe that it is somebody else's obligation to ensure that access is happening for them and the people who look like them. And honestly, I'm saying that, hey, it's real. Individually, we all have an obligation to stand up because I cannot guarantee you that the organizations choosing to represent the issues that affect you as people are representing your best interests. It requires people empower other people, and that so perhaps that it's not going to be the president and the vice president and the leaders in the community that continue to take the pictures. It'll be the community people being empowered to help support and build change within their local community. Life means we have to build consensus about how we're doing things, but something basic needs to happen, and that is the protection so that we stop having 8-year-old black children who would commit suicide at 8 years old. Understand, children would choose to hang themselves with a belt in the closet, and I've seen it. And it's unfortunate at 62 that we can document that this kind of pain within our community, and we can't challenge the dysfunctional system that's providing the lack of services. So, therein lies my conversation to many, 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 many who would proclaim that advocacy is what they're choosing in 2021. Well, that would require that we really truly have the conversation that impacts change and the accountability that would impact the change in our local communities. And that's just real. And it's real if I have Pandora on my phone. It's getting boring down here. There are so many different things. This is my Pandora. And the reality is that, we, the people, we the people, we have a personal responsibility. And I don't know how we do it because it's just not important that I see you face to face if you're sharing the same concern as I am in regards to field services. And if you're a parent and you don't have the ability to share the concern about your child not having the same ability as other children, well, I'm telling you, the responsibility lies within you, parent. You have to share a concern and you have to write it out to your principal, to your teacher, and you say, I have a concern that my child is not meeting the basic proficiency standards for the children who are at her grade level. And that's what we have to understand. That's our obligation, our basic obligation to understanding who we are as individuals, as Americans, and opportunities that America truly brings by allowing immigrants to participate in the public process of oversight. As you know, what was his name? Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor.
Okay, immigrant, born immigrant, probably an American citizen, but truly comes from a different country. hmm And downtown Las Vegas in the October shooting that happened was done by an immigrant. I mean, ultimately came from Norway, but then you had a president that was saying that we need more Norwegians here. I was trying to understand that one myself because people really didn't play into that, what was said. And I'm saying, but people really don't play into a lot of things. And, influencers and influential people are leading us down the rosy path of hell. hmm Because we are truly paying for a system that is documenting our people as being dysfunctional. And what did I say the word was? Habitually delinquent or whatever. It has to do with being dysfunctional and having no ability to transition out of that behavior. But I don't even know how they get the assessment that demonstrates that, that's you at 11 and that you cannot come back into your local school forever. And this is a system of punitive, punitive operation that doesn't meet the needs of the offer of a free and appropriate public education because it just doesn't, because they write you out of. And then, I did talk to that Nevada Department of Education about what I thought about the punitive policies, and he's going to tell me that was his job. And I understand, boo, it is your job. And perhaps it is, but when it's oppressive to people who look like me, then I have to share concern. And my concern is a public concern because once people start understanding that they have a right to challenge whatever you've written about their children, and they have a right to seek additional services beyond what you are willing to provide as the right to a free and appropriate public service, well, then guess what, boo? Life changes for you. Because then all of a sudden it comes to a measured and monitored response to the offer of a free and appropriate public education. And it really does work. So, no, failure is never going to be something that I would accept as an offer of something, but to be free and appropriate. As you know, the responsibility to engage in the process is on you. And then, a parent can deny the responsibility to participate. They don't have to choose to accept the services of special education. And that just averts the responsibility of the people to engage in the process. And that's just real. So, in essence, you're kind of like taking your own self out of the conversation as you're not participating and you don't show up. And even if it's not benefiting people who look like you, and it's not you that's determining who's going to get the contracts, and these are elected people. They're supposed to be representing you and your interests, but okay, when it's really not your interest that's being represented, what are you doing? And you can't even talk about it publicly because they limit your opportunity to just engage in the process, because they say, well, you had a chance when you elected people to the bond oversight committee. Yeah, you did. And the conversations that are happening in the bond oversight committee are limited to what the district is providing them in regards to the obligation of the bond committee, and looking at the maintenance of effort for the benefit for all children relevant to attendance zones or whatever. What can we say? I don't know anymore. What should we do? Expect the same outcomes of the investment for dollars invested in our community. And failure should not be an option. And if it is an option and you've accepted it for the people who look like you, why? In 2021, when everything has changed and the pandemic changes the game, and then you find out that some of these kids really never even had access. So what is the response when you can figure out that perhaps crime has committed here, or just a bold abuse of the process, and certain people have not been afforded the same opportunities? How do you pay back that community? I don't know. Because you're not even trying to accept that you owe that community anything. Isn't that a shame? That's what I think. It's a shame. And, it's just what America's about. Self-expression. That's what America's about. How will you learn that the journey you're on is critical to the outcomes of the maintenance of your journey, and that every opportunity for a lesson that was afforded to you prior to today was so that you could carry out your mission in life. And everybody in this journey has a mission, but you first must be willing to join in. But for the people who don't believe that, basically, that it stinks when it's rotten, you know what I'm saying? And that the outcomes are not equitable. And you can see a demonstration of the lack of oversight and the lack of engagement, the inability to share in the same concept ideals that would enable the opportunity for all children to benefit. But for your people, has become so restrictive, and children can just be dismissed at the age of 11. Who gives life sentences like that? How at 11 years old could you be perceived as a habitual delinquent? Somebody, please break it down, because it doesn't seem to be a reasonable concept of the use of the federal allocations when that's your one and only opportunity to lift yourself out of poverty. But at 11 years old, it could be deemed that you, perhaps, don't deserve to have those same opportunities, so that you could be expelled permanently from, just the way these legislative bills have been written, so punitive to the people who they're supposed to be providing services, and no remediation for the demonstration of support and efficacy that should be established under the receipt of the funding from the federal government. So that means that they ain't holding themselves accountable to shit. And if you failing, oh well, boo, it's on you. What did that sound like to me? That truly just sounded like, oh well, there it goes. That's how it is in America. And in America, get a grip. It's not going to change if you choose not to establish that you have a voice and that you have been given the same gift that I have been given, an opportunity to engage in the conversation about the maintenance of effort and the ability to share your view and to impact change that would benefit people who look like you in 2021. Because this is definitely a new day. It's a new day, it's a new dawn. And it is a new way as we all understand the impact of engaging and empowering people to understand who they are and understand that it's choice, that they're choosing not to demand a level of outcomes and oversight for the services that are being provided to their people, because it's just a very public conversation. Is it working? Is how they're choosing to provide services to the children who are not reading at third grade level. What do they choose to do, and what do they choose to change? Because, see, they already had a bill implemented that Tyrone Thompson had written, Read by Grade 3. Although it was a federal initiative, the responsibility to ensure that that was happening came from the local community. And the board and the governing board was elected to ensure that the challenges of the state decided to take that on as a challenge. And they also decided to take on a challenge at equity and access. And then AB 469 or 458 or whatever, there's an equity bill. And under this item number 13, let's see, under this item number 13, they chose to, oh, there we go. I've got a beautiful picture of my daughters. I don't know if you can see it. Here we go. This is my family. Hey, that's family. That's what it's all about. I'm a grandmother already and a soon to be new grandmother too. So understand, y'all, life is good. It's just beautiful. And I'm just telling you, life is good when you know who you are and you understand your independent ability to navigate this system means you have to understand what the rules say. And for every rule, there is a process that aligns with the services. And the maintenance of effort comes from the aligning targeted services to benefit the child. But it's written out at the federal government. It's unfortunate that Nevada has chosen to write all these very restrictive policies that implement the ability of a child to excess, and then they create all these negative policies that really are very oppressive. And if you get online, you start reading the educational implementation of services that are written by Nevada legislatures, that is all they do. Very limited access to the children who understand what the process really is. So for families who understand how education really works, of course those things are not happening at those school sites. But for children who are in large placements where the services are being provided by temporary teachers who are not committed to carrying out any of the single plan for student achievement, so there's no planning for services for these children. There's no written concept of how they plan on benefiting, because I was trying to understand if they did this data collection in regards to read by grade 3, how it would actually be implemented. And so you don't get to hear that. But I did hear one time they did some kind of conversation at the legislative level in regards to what happened by that data collection. So they know who's reading and who's not reading. What they have not determined is the level of services to engage the children so that they would be reading by grade 6. And the transition of those children, when they're placed in middle schools, there's no accountability for the 2 years that they're serving in the middle school. And then for the lack of maintenance, when we have 12th graders who have 5th grade reading levels and are not adequately aligned with the credentials, people who could make a change for them, who are creating these vocational rehabilitation process. But I'm going to tell you, in America, it's you. It's just you, boo. Don't look around for anybody else because the challenge is yours. How will you challenge yourself to push ahead beyond understanding that you're moving within a movement, not necessarily within an organization? The movement is for a better opportunity for children who look like you and I. And the understanding, if it's happening, how to how to demand accountability. They're so concerned about these physical assaults on these Asian Americans. I'm concerned too. You know why I'm concerned? I'm concerned because the physical murders of Black Americans in America, the physical, you know, it's real. So what are we saying in America? There is an obligation to ensure that access is happening for the people who look like you, and what and how that is actually happening and how it's being measured locally, and the responsibility of the outcomes of the maintenance of effort and how that truly happens in the Black community as it is not happening. So here we are. The challenge is having the real conversation as to truly what is the expectation of the public engagement for the Black community locally, and what does it actually look like to ensure that access is happening for the people who are engaged and understand that the clenching of the purse, the public murders, the public assassinations of Black Americans is coming from the under education, under oversight and outcomes of the maintenance of effort, and the lack of the ability to benefit from the public service providers is real. So here we are in 2021, where African American children had dropped out of public school because a lot of kids just are not going. When they can't read by the 8th grade, do you understand that it is a constant documentation of the inability to control that young person within the classroom who is not engaged in the process as everyone else? That's what it's about. And so, if we can see this disengagement of children who are being promoted without making meaningful progress, then that's where we have to challenge the system to turn around. We have to have these dual vocational educational content ideals and process and understand that we, the people, are relevant when it comes to the outcomes of the maintenance for services provided. And let's not, this is bullshit. When people want to pretend that the maintenance of effort is nothing, and what maintenance of effort actually is, well, boo, it has to do with the outcomes and the measurable outcomes, the disaggregated data that demonstrates that you, state, have created an environment in which everybody has access, equally access. But if you have created dual programs that do not just demonstrate the same level of support that a child would have gotten in their home school, and all these charters and programs that are operating under charter status without the obligation to ensure that adequate yearly progress is being measured, and the inability of the state to monitor the maintenance of effort of the services that are being provided from the people who are working within your community. Boo, wake up. Just because you're a nonprofit and what you're providing is not the curriculum scope of public education art. No, you're providing the mental and the social emotional support provided from community members to help, build capacity. You see what I'm saying? Somewhere else. You're coming from somewhere else. You're not coming from the basic understanding of accessing the process and understanding that you just follow the rules and pay the taxes, that the same protections are afforded to you as every other American. But no, boo, it ain't happening that way. No, we witnessed it with George Floyd. I mean, actually, the world witnessed it. And the inability of the American Black population to draw concern to how that was oppressing the mental health of the Black community and the hopelessness that's generated by young Black or women of my age, actually, who have had their children assassinated by law enforcement for failing to understand the process in which they were requested to participate in. I mean, come on now, when they can murder and take the lives of people who would not understand, what the request of them was in the process of communicating a fearful response, and then to kill them. People lose their lives because they have a cell phone. I just wonder how we're supposed to continue to process what. Oh, my nose. I hate allergies. But I'm trying to understand what we're supposed to continue to process in this America, where it is the land of the free and the home of the brave, and where, most likely your parents, if you're my age, have done some community service and have been engaged in the military and understand the responsibility of civic engagement and personal responsibility for citizenship, and sharing your concerns about the maintenance of outcomes for the people who look like you. It's just relative. What are you doing? My challenge to you is to understand who should share in the concerns of the lack of maintenance for the services that are being provided for the people who look like you. And perhaps it's just you, boo. That's what I'll say. Perhaps the missing ingredient is you. That's what I'll say. As I gotta be back in a minute. I gotta go away for a second. I gotta get another box of clean. back, water, and another box of Kleenex. I didn't have to go all the way in the house, but I did have to go to the shed. And it's just wonderful to have everything you need right at your fingertips, and the blessing of having organized services, basically. Oh, it's gross. But I still think the fresh sunshine and the fresh air is good for you. So you got to spend time outside in the sun and get your vitamin D to stay healthy. And then you got to eat right. And you have to basically limit your real live kills and meat in your system, and try to understand that the body can repair itself if you're taking care of it. Because the body is just amazing. It can't replace any items that they cut off, of course. But you can let them augment and cut you up, you know, and that's what they do because they get paid to do that, even if they can't document that actually they found cancer or no cancer. But if they find cancer and they claim they did, you let them do what they do, and then it's over. Then if they don't find any more, then it's just you, boo. You and your faith. Eat right. Change your life. Take care of yourself. Quit smoking cigarettes. Change to the alternative pain medication. Maintain your level of stress. Become clearly um, aligned with the outcomes of services that are being provided in your local community. Ask questions, ensure that children are becoming educated, and that the opportunity truly exists. Because no matter what you do, boo, you're going to pay. And as we pay for these services to come back to our local communities, we should demand a level of involvement, engagement, and the vision for what we see in America. As that one nightclub opening up on the historic west side called the Oasis is going to be instrumental in our community, aligning services. Black Americans, entertainers of all, have never been afraid to engage with our people, but never had the opportunity to engage where we really should engage and support and bring support to the community and align services to ensure that the communication happening within our community is happening and that people can do self-advocacy. And that's just real. What is self-advocacy? I'm telling you, it's to be able to understand that you are responsible for self. We have to save ourselves and don't expect anybody else to do it. There's no apologies for accepting, what we've learned to accept below basic and far, far below basic doesn't exist in my book. I don't even know what that means. That means that you didn't document it away. You're saying that my child is struggling. Okay. So what are we going to do ensuring that my child is learning how to engage in the process, and how are you going to create that opportunity, and what are you doing to provide that level of service? Because it's very strategic, and learning is based on foundational supports. So it's just learning is kind of built on building blocks. And so once the child learns something, then they move on to learn something else, move on to learn something else, then just consistently growing, consistently developing, until the ability to understand, seek knowledge, process information, align in the direction in which they would like to travel, and then move towards that. You kind of understand what I'm saying? Not about, oh, the family had a problem getting the kid there because you had them on the bus, then they missed the bus because they didn't get up on time, or there's all kind of things that happen in the family that impede their ability to to be documented as habitual, truants or whatever. They got this negative language that is all written in the description of the aligned services that are entitled to people within a community. And I'm just telling you how it looks at the ED department, under the Department of Education, under the United States Code of Education and that creates the free and appropriate. All this language and dialogue is already created at the federal level, and all you got to do is just dump it in your level locally and then implement it. But no, they create policies that are kind of on the other side of creating access, very restrictive policies. I didn't understand, so I said, well, let me just send them to idea.ed.gov. And I did. And they said they recognized that I might have had a point. And perhaps I should talk to the other people at the Department of Nevada Education, but I already talked to those people. And they seem to think that they're doing their damn job. I'm saying that if the policies they have created are oppressing people in your local community, then my people, you need to stand up and file these federal complaints, because it is a complaint of denial of access. It is a complaint of refusals to comply to the process of ensuring that the protection of the services of the children being offered these services in these community partners with these that are not being oppressing the community because they're not getting the other services they should be getting, and you don't have no way to concern yourself about it. And I'm saying, oh no, just because they don't have the data, the federal government needs to impose some real punishments in regards to forcing them to partner with real community partners, unlike the partnership that they had with West Ed. Because I can't see the benefit that West Ed actually did, except for they had a few rogue people who were trying to complement Nevada in its inability to create equal access to the public services. I mean, come on now. It's how they think. And I'm sorry, how they think is a little bit corrupt. So, understand that your child can have a real disability, meaning that they can have a real disability, and that the parent can navigate the process in which the services are happening for the child and actually make that all wonderful, meaning growing and developing and appreciating the process. In this conversation, we're going to appreciate the process. Mm. The people who were paying the summer vacations for, and the paid Christmas holidays, and all of the other wonderful health care and retirement, those people who are being paid out of the coffers of the federal dollars, the federal allocation dollars that are coming back to support the community in which the services are being provided, in which a local district could have over a $200 million carryover from the dollars that were not spent at the higher poverty schools where the children were failing. $200 million carryover. And that money is being adequately, swept over here so that we can reallocate that money and pay all the things that we didn't get to pay because we ain't following nobody's rules. And quite frankly, we don't give a damn. Well, I give a damn. And so therefore, what can I say? My name is Darlene Anderson. It goes right along with the DA. I'm just advising that there is more to be had in a public conversation about the lack of outcomes, and the lack of investment, and the inability to share and create, but the opportunity right now in this moment to transition and to bring about change as we have a place, from what I understand, to start showing up as entertainers to document that we are all on the same page and perhaps belong to the same house. The one that when you walk in the door in life is already assigned to you by the jacket that you carry. Just the color of the jacket makes a difference. But all along the way, you have to learn that the journey has been critical to your ability to progress. And what does that feel like when you're progressing in the process? I tell you, it feels like this is America. And the responsibility to understand, to engage in the process as a unique American, just unique American issue. As
we are living in a democracy that is governed by a republic. And and to this republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How do you fit in? Ask yourself, what are you doing to make a difference? Challenge yourself. What are you willing to do? Where's your level of expertise? In your whole life, I don't care what you were good at. I'm sure it's going to be good at something that has to be paid attention to in 2021 when it comes to maintaining the level of services and outcomes and benefits for people who look like us. And understand that along the way we lost a lot of good people, people who helped establish the process in the first place. We can talk about Fred Hampton, we can talk about Malcolm, we can talk about Martin, we can talk about the process and what was going on during the time, but what we can't talk about is the process and what's happening today. What's happening today in 2021 in regards to maintaining public services and outcomes for the people who look like you? And that's just a real relevant conversation that is not happening. Not here in Clark County, although to be the fifth largest school district in the nation, fifth largest, scoring at the bottom as the demonstration of services and the maintenance of effort for the people who are in higher poverty situations where services are perhaps not prominently being overseen, and where they would have a $200 million carryover for the dollars that have been allocated. But more concerning is that the transition of the equity under this item number 13, this bill, that was supposed to be more inclusive of the principled services for services happening within the community, and more inclusive in allowing community members to engage in the process. And I can't see that it's identified any of the issues that have been resolved, because none of the issues have been resolved. African Americans are still in the bottom here in Clark County. They have the highest dropout rate. They have the highest incarceration rate. And we cannot identify the services that are being provided to the children who have been expelled or suspended from school permanently from their home school within a district, and they're still generating the same dollars. And so my confusion is that what is the obligation, and who feels that what the level of obligation is, and what are they doing? Because it's very confusing. They've written themselves all these wonderful protections. They want to have a waiver until 2024, 2026. And I'm saying, who the hell does that? Who waives a responsibility for the oversight process, for the maintenance of effort and disaggregate data that would be provided to the children in a local community? Who waives that? People who are stupid, who thought they were good, who forgot that we had a new election. That's what happened. And perhaps accountability weighs now more than ever before. Accountability is what we're talking about. And I don't have to talk about anything. All I have to do is say, let's just look at the data, shall we? Because the data tells the whole story. So as the data is talking about all these lack of outcomes and services that are not being provided for the people who look like me within my community, I have to engage my community members to just challenge the system in which we're living, that is denying and oppressing our voices within the structure of public services. Create a process in which we can come together and share our concerns publicly in regards to the lack of maintenance and outcome from the services that are being provided through not-for-profit agencies who are benefiting these community people who are not providing the same level of access to the same level of support that should be provided to our people. And wake up, America, wake up. Well, I'm tired now. Mentally exhausted, because it's just, you can just keep talking forever and maybe people just won't listen. But anyways, I'll say catch me on Anchor. Catch me on YouTube.
And this is Darlene Anderson signing out. I have that parent empowerment hour on Anchor, but on there's one more. Oh, and I wanted to mention financial aid. Today's the last day to apply for federal financial aid to get fully funded. If you're planning on going to school next semester and getting a full grant, you better apply by midnight tonight. So this is Darlene Anderson signing out and saying, have a great day. Until we meet again, this is DA and